Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I'm your host, Scott Raff. Photo courtesy of Montana's own Reddit user, Singing Sky Photography. So a little shout out to them. Usually the Montana subreddit posts quite a bit of beautiful scenery. So I've been taking a couple of those and just posting them right behind me just to give a nice look about Montana and various locations around our great state. All right, so as we're jumping in, we're going to talk about some city council stuff. I got Dublin stuff. It's also First Friday, so I have your art guide for the downtown Missoula area. If you're going to be out and about tonight, there's a lot of great places to hop into, look at some art, look at some free hors d'oeuvres and wine at various places in the downtown Missoula area, including the Florence Hotel, the old Florence Hotel in downtown Missoula. They always host a wine kind of gathering and whatnot. Rhino also does drinks for raising money for fundraisers and nonprofits. But other than that, we're going to jump right into your city council. The city meeting was roughly over an hour, and they discussed various water main replacements and updating ordinances pertaining to public works and as it pertains to the Unified Development Code. The regular business opened up for 2025 Housing Strategy Update and Housing Strategy Resolution. But first, we got Chris Foster, River Road Neighborhood, gives a brief update on kind of what's going on in their neck of the woods.
River Road has some complications with right away. We have a working ditch right there on River Road. And people are aware of the budget constraints and Americans with Disabilities Act and all the other stuff that goes into just doing a street. But I think there's general consensus that we don't need anything fancy. We just need separation between the cars and pedestrians and bikes along River Road. And we prove that concept works on Curtis. So I think most people would be happy with something like that, and it would be a lot cheaper.
Okay, so this is just one example of many community council neighborhoods. River Road can be challenging and a great way to get access from Russell to Reserve with very little problems from general traffic. He also mentions neighborhood councils are a good way to connect and get these things done in the community. And you can sign up for your respective community council by going onto the website. They usually have newsletters that get emailed out to people every month. I use the Google to sign up for the Franklin to the Fort newsletter. I just looked up Franklin to the Fort newsletter and it pointed me right in the directions of the City of Missoula's website. As we move on to the first time public commenter, this is Jane Broach, spoke about something that many of us have experienced here in Missoula. Actually, wait, do I have it? No, I don't. Weird. Huh. Let's see. Anyways, moving on. That's weird. I thought I had it, but I guess did I misplace it or something? Huh. What do you know? I guess I didn't subclip it, but regardless, moving on, as we go into public comment, Carrie Schreiber spoke about the dangers of Brooks and Higgins. So this is what she had to say.
There's been a lot of talk about safety around the Brook Street corridor. There are a lot of studies, there are a lot of long-term plans, but I want to know what we can do in the short term. And at this intersection in particular, we have asked for a traffic study in the past, and when Julie Anderson was on council and she lived on the corner and we did not qualify for it. At this point, I would think that we would, and we know that with the ongoing or the upcoming construction that there's going to be even more of a need for it. I mean, there's a children's therapy center, there's a 70-kid daycare, there's also semi-trucks that come through, and I don't know if a four-way stop or a calming circle would work better, but we're in great need. And I don't know if you all heard that pedestrian that was killed a few weeks ago. Brooks was our vice chair of our leadership council. And again, just what can we do to address safety issues now rather than so many things that are in this long-term planning issue? And we absolutely need a traffic study and some solutions, especially for that intersection. That's the second time we've had a rollover like that.
All right, and for the past 10 years, the City of Missoula has decried to Montana Department of Transportation, the Highway Department, many different organizations, because it is a federal major highway corridor between 93 and 90, and also Montana roads are under the Montana Department of Transportation, and so they need to make sure that no money is being wasted Thus, the government has also created this slowdown process for many of the things that have been a long-standing problem of Reserve Street. And how can we expect to improve safety on a road that's only going to start increase in terms of population? So that's one thing that is concerning of many growing neighborhoods across the city of Missoula is growing traffic. Intersections are going to be overused, and then if there's even close calls, those close calls get amplified even more, and then the higher risk of accidents. And not to mention the Brooks Reserve Corridor is one of those tricky ones because you're going from a straight-on road to more slanted road, and part of that also has 2 free right turns from Reserve to Brooks, which allows people to turn right on red, which can be very confusing for a lot of people who usually don't go down that road, especially since it is a highway connection. If people going essentially to Missoula to use that as a throughway to go down south or north. Anyways, the 2025 housing survey was presented to the city of Missoula on regular businesses. I spoke about it last week, and the city looked to the future of affordable housing, and one of the takeaways was when presenter pointed out that that using city-owned property to sell to developers to help create funding mechanism to affordable housing projects, the lack of resources to repeat those major affordable housing plans that were implemented in the early 2020s from Villaggio to the Trinity Navigation Center, not to mention the Rivar project is coming into fruition later this year. Bob Campbell, City Council, reflects on the demand for affordability, and this is what he had to say in terms of preemptively preventing any kind of potential. He wanted to make an amendment to these to this housing plan, a place called Home, and he wanted to make sure that they wouldn't ask the taxpayer money for more money to fund these things.
And the idea under priority 1A of that housing trust fund is to look at the possibility of doing some type of citywide bond or propose some sort of bond initiative, voter-approved bond. And I don't see it, at least at present, that there's a necessity for that. I think, having done a tremendous amount of work with this land use plan and uniform development code, I think now is the opportunity to, give the free market a chance and developers a chance to come in and take advantage of that new plan. And hopefully it's, with tweaks here and there, hopefully this is something that could get, development going from a private sector standpoint, from a free enterprise standpoint.
Okay, so essentially he wanted to create an amendment to prevent any bonds from asking the taxpayer money, which is something that is not really even being thought of for this particular matter. But for the most part, I think he kind of opened a can of worms by preventing something that wasn't really even thought of. The city does see private public partnerships as a means to get more affordable housing units in major developments. But with the UDC, many of those can be used to create more flexibility in urban residential model to the city is aiming for. The city hopes that this will make permitting easier and cost savings for more developers to create more housing to keep up with demand. We are also falling behind demand like crazy. While Bob wanted to preemptively prevent a bond, Carrie Schreiber, opened up to the public, spoke in response.
That if the MRA had the objectives of supporting affordable housing, we would already be halfway there. I agree with Councillor Campbell in not having yet another bond go out to the public. All the ideas of getting money into this are varied through business investors and encouraging donations and such things. We don't need to grab from the public's general funds or like we do with the TIF or add more burden in all of this.
Yeah, and also not to mention is that the county is also weighing their options to utilize Urban Renewal District funds, aka TIF funding, to help bolster their TEDs, which are the Targeted Economic Development Districts. So they're working on moving that. Of course, mind you, a bond was never really part of the conversation. He kind of opened it up, and there was a lot of back and forth with a lot of people, and the messaging wasn't clear, but the city's priorities are not for affordable housing as opposed to upping the housing stock overall. This topic sent the city into a major back and forth, potentially blown up in Mr. Campbell's face for planting the seeds of a bond request in the future. But you never know. Bonds are like one of those things that if the city has a taste for it, they'll ask the community if they want to implement it. MCPS does bonds all the time to help update their departments and facilities and make sure that everyone is adequately updated for your children. And that's where you get those bonds. And luckily, they were able to do in the 2014s when people were had a little bit more notches in their belt, to say the least. But Gwen Jones, City Council, kind of wraps up this particular meeting before I move on to committee meetings, kind of reiterating kind of what I've talked about, just being like the city's priorities are just, they really can't just pivot, because their main goal is just updating housing stock and making it easier for developers to develop.
The strategy is, as staff has said last Wednesday and many times, there is no one silver bullet with affordable housing. There are very strong economic forces far beyond the power of any city council that impact housing, but we figure out the areas where we can make a difference, and you dial in on that, and we try and push that forward, and having a strategy where we don't focus on one thing, but where in fact we have numerous different approaches, so you're approaching the problem from different areas, is the most effective. That's been proven time and time again, and that's what this policy does. So I am glad we have it in place. Curious to see the next 5 years where we can make progress. I looked back at what we had accomplished in the last 5 to 6 years, and it is an exhaustive list, including code reform, which is a huge, huge, heavy lift.
All right. Yep, there's just a lot of stuff going on. The city can only keep up with so much, and community meetings jumped into climate conservation and parks, which introduced our new Parks and Rec director, Marina Yoshiko. As she appears before us council, she talks about herself and what she plans to do with her new position. So here is our first quote.
I just completed my first 2 months on the job, where I've been listening and learning. I've been meeting with staff, partners, and stakeholders, and assessing where we are operationally. I moved here from Helena, Montana, where I was the Chief of Operations for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And my background is in state parks and landscape architecture. I'm here today to provide a couple updates on the department, and I'll be talking about the Trails Ambassador Program, the McCormick Park pilot update, and then highlighting some new and exciting after-school programs. So last week you learned about the River Ambassador Program, and today I want to contrast that with the Trails Ambassador Program. It started back in 2017, a partnership with the Lolo National Forest Missoula Ranger District, and we partnered to hire a joint front country trail ranger to address increased use on trails. And during the pandemic, that ranger identified a gap that one staff member alone couldn't meet the growing need for user education and outreach. And that insight led to the creation of the Trails Ambassador Program. This is a volunteer-based stewardship model. Ambassadors are trained community members who set up at high-use trailheads. They provide trail etiquette guidance like leave no trace. And they connect users to additional resources and volunteer opportunities.
All right, and so there's just a little taste about how they're doing what this kind of thing, where they're trying to educate more people as opposed to being the buzzkill. Essentially, what kind of led to these ambassador programs to kind of launch is to have a constant contact within the community. Just have somebody outreach and talk to people, be like, hey, pick up your dog's poop. That's essentially what this all means. Mind you, Reddit was filled with those posts by folks calling out people who don't pick up their dog's poop and poop bags. Aside from the River Ambassadors are another branch that gets paid for services, and like the opportunities to work with Parks and Rec become available during the peak summer months, May to September. And so far they have 50 ambassadors with help from more than Five Valleys Land Trust grants and funding mechanisms as a Fed cut many positions. But Marina also talks about the pesticide-free programs that they are launching and continuing with the efforts to make sure that the grass is greener in McCormick Park.
So for those of you not familiar, back in 2020, this pilot project began with Grow Safe Missoula and Healthy Babies Bright Futures, where national organic experts came to our park to provide soil testing, training, and implementation guidance. After a few early funding gaps slowed progress, we've now had 2 full growing seasons with consistent organic inputs. And so some of our current practices include organic fertilizers, aeration and dethatching, overseeding and top dressing, and manual weed removal. Last year, we did 80 hours of manual weed removal. Ugh, that's hard to say. Manual weed removal. So 80 hours of that. And the good news is soil health indicators are improving. What that means is root depth of like the grasses has increased from originally 1 to 2 inches to about 4 inches. That's great news.
All right. So yeah, deeply rooted grass happening more and more with more natural herbicides and stuff like that. Let's see, where am I in my list? Right there. And so far, these are the priorities in Parks and Rec and how Marina has transitioned into a position to continue these efforts. Donna Glocker has been involved with City Parks and Rec for about 20 years, and there's definitely some big shoes to fill. And part of that also has to do with their after-school program, since the Parks and Rec have kind of stepped up to add that missing middle between 3 and 5 p.m.
For this semester, we launched 8 new middle school programs with capacity to serve up to 100 participants a week. And this age group, it's really important because they typically have fewer structured options. Research shows it to be a time when kids lose interest in activities, and it's the greatest risk for them to make unhealthy choices. And so one of the barriers, in addition to that, to getting them to after-school programs is transportation. And we've solved that by picking up from 3 different middle schools and transporting them to Jefferson. So we're providing greater access to middle school extracurricular activities. And these programs focus on engagement, career exploration, recreation, and positive peer connection. And for this new one, we have some I thought they were really fun activities. So there's a sewing program, a filmmaking, creative writing, bike mechanics, babysitting, cosmetology, a whole lot. And I was hearing feedback how in one of the classes, they were learning cooking skills. And one week they made pickles to then in the following week put those in hamburgers they were learning to make. And so overall, very wholesome, very good.
All right. So yeah, there's just a little taste of that, and not to mention, like, the flagship program. Who don't know, the flagship program kind of ended as the pandemic really kind of kicked off. Was a major activities-based program to supplement the 3 to 5 p.m. gap. 9 to 5 is pretty normal schedule for parents, and kids kind of do the roughly 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. most days. The city takes on some of these responsibilities that can help sustain as many other programs become too costly. Brian Applegate with the Parks and Rec follow up with more child care programs. And kind of goes further on this.
We have been growing every single year, trying to meet the demand, and we are thoughtful about that growth. So I think it's a balance of, yes, capital resources, yes, growing our scholarship fund, yes, growing our equipment and our space needs, and we are trying to do that at a rate that provides increased capacity without at all affecting our quality and our safety of our programming.
Yep. And, Parks and Recreation really stepped up during the pandemic in terms of just providing childcare during those years. Being too big is a good problem to have, and there are opportunities for many other organizations to sponsor and donate resources to the Parks and Rec. Think about it. I remember MCAT and Clay Studio and many different other, even dance group here in Missoula, Headwaters, did some after-school programs as well, I believe. And they're a big part of the backbone of the flagship program. And they use their relationship with MCPS to help space at the schools for offices and classrooms to fill in those holes. Maybe Parks and Rec will also jump into that too. They have city police officers inside the schools, and so many of the information presented isn't anything new for the child care, but as they continue to implement PROST, the Parks and Trails and all that stuff into the Unified Development Code, expect to see some growing green footprints in Missoula. Up next we have some programs that are airing on MCAT. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out our list at MCAT TV Missoula, our YouTube page, and here is a little taste of Your Missoula, hosted by Joel Baird, and various other programs that you can watch right now on our YouTube page.
Mission matchup, and if you scroll down, I think it shows some of the groups that are involved in the event.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website does show last year's participants. So the website is MissoulaCountyFairgrounds.com/matchup.
Got it. Is there anything else people should know? Like the event is free.
Yep, it's free to get in, and there'll be free refreshments if you don't want to spend any money, but
Yeah, and you could spend money on the serving time food truck.
yeah, absolutely. And if you want to get some dinner, you can get serving time because it'll be right around dinner time.
That's right. So we should tell people again the date and time, because we know we have to say it 7 times.
Yeah.
Make sure.
The brand spanking new Montana Heritage Center. So have any of you been there yet? Okay, a couple of you? Excellent. Just to give you a little sneak preview, I strongly encourage all of you to make pilgrimage down to Helena and check out this, this gorgeous new space. It's completely revamped. It's a new space. Lots and lots of artifacts and historical items are on exhibit for the very first time. And there's an entire gallery devoted to their modern art collection, none of which has ever been on display before. So it's worth the trip.
Like, I work with a French winery. They brought me a gigantic French ledger book from the 1700s from France. And I was like, I don't understand what it's saying, but it's really cool paper. I'll draw on that. So there's stuff like that, you know, in meeting really good people in the world and giving me their own ledger books from their family, from their farms or from their ranches. And then, you know, and that's precious to these folks. But they see what I'm doing, and they're like, all right, if I pass away and leave the earth, this book is going to get thrown away, or who knows where it's going to go. So will you take it, do your art on it, my family's name's on it, it'll go on for however long it lasts, and their name will go on. And I said, yes, we'll be together. And that's really cool.
I guess one thing we haven't talked about is we run a coalition called Pro Housing Missoula that is a group of what we say like unlikely allies, just folks who organize together to get a zoning code that really allows urban infill within the city so that our city can continue to support all these people that want to live here. Like, it's a great place, you know, kind of like you alluded to.
Right, with all the background work.
Yeah, where are they going to live? And so in addition to just doing the community land trust model and getting folks into homeownership that way, this coalition has been organizing for the last 3.5 years or so, and the city just passed its Unified Development Code, which is great. We're excited to see, you know, I guess, equity among neighborhoods. So neighborhoods all taking on their fair share of this growth that we anticipate happening without any one neighborhood being like totally burdened and experiencing a larger amount of change.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's talk about some movies that are coming out this weekend. It's time for a Pre-Critic, where I judge a movie based on nothing more than my biases towards movies in general. Kicking things off is The Bride. Here comes edgy Bonnie and Frankenstein's monster. Watch as The Bride takes center stage in a monster movie based on the roaring 20s as the creature is lonely and asks a scientist to create his bride. Essentially, it's about a murdered woman's corpse brought back and the baggage of her resurrection, with crime families meeting the unstoppable monster. I suppose the creature takes the back street to the revenge and turns out to be a toxic partner, forcing her to get a second chance and take out the patriarchy, even metaphorically. Then we got Hoppers. This Pixar movie is basically the Wild Robot, Avatar, and all those 90s cartoons where the main character gets turned into a thing, learns to belong, and saves them from a something. In this case, a girl stirs things up and changes how animals treat humans, resulting in habitual behaviors to humans rather than just observing in the wild. So basically Avatar, but not exactly but not exactly portraying humans, but getting close. All right, then we got Heel. With those movies coming out, we got a bunch of these movies that are probably not going to be well known. Family of fanatics take law into their own hands. It's basically like a homeschool family who are just like, what if we force ourselves to homeschool this other person, unwilling participant? So this is the movie Heal. Then we got Protector. Mila Jovovich trades in her orange swimsuit and Resident Evil monsters for a grounded action movie where she fights the people who thought they broke her, but she break them beyond repair, death and bullets to the face and all that stuff. Then we got Youngblood. They're making this movie like it's the Jackie Robinson of ice hockey. Watch as the hockey prodigy and angry guy Youngblood works with a coach who is giving him one last chance to prove he's ready to be in the big leagues. Underdog sports movie is sorely missed, but you know, they always have to come out once in a while. And then we got some movies coming out. I got another special for you guys, dubbing stuff, coming back with a 1948 movie, $1 Million Weekend. So without further ado, here's this. When I come back, we're going to talk about some art.
Here you go. Let me light your cigarette. No, it's it.
Thank you.
Can I sit with you since I lit your cigarette?
This guy again. I'm telling you for the 30th time, I'm not interested in a timeshare.
That's me. Why buy real estate when you could, rent it?
Well, I'd rather build equity than build crap.
Well, crap has value, and you could grow flowers or whatever.
Don't sell me on the circle of life, you punk.
Listen, you mind if I hang up my timeshare hat? Because the things I'm about to say do not represent the timeshare company in anything whatsoever. Perhaps maybe you could use a drink or something.
I tend to drink my problems away, but you're still here.
Well, every problem has a solution. What's yours?
I don't know how much clearer I have to make this, but there's no solutions with me.
Everybody has the means that... Oh, do I smell like Axe body spray? I think I liberally put it on. I can tell by the face, pretty liberally. Perhaps maybe we should listen to some music. We like your tourism money, but not your personality. Get out. Oh, let's change gears here for a second there. Let's talk about options. You don't look like the kind of person who wants to buy a timeshare. Perhaps maybe you want to sell it, maybe to other people. I make all sorts of money, which explains why I'm here in this tropical climate city. It just kind of makes sense. You make a lot of money, you go on these trips. What's your secret? How did you get out here?
Well, I listened to a Little Orphan Annie radio ad, and I guess I just won this trip to Hawaii.
Well, it seems luck's on your side. Perhaps maybe we should hit the tables and see how your luck turns out there.
Well, I'm not really for the gambling kind of thing because I think it's stupid and I think people who do it are kind of stupid.
I beg your pardon?
It's stupid.
Well, stupid is as stupid does.
And yet here you are.
Touché. Well, perhaps maybe a couple drinks will loosen you up a little bit. Maybe we'll just chill out for a bit. Maybe listen to some soothing music from the, Are you okay? You're kind of spacing out.
Check, please.
Let me just lean in a bit.
Yeah.
Oh!
You think you can hide that bald spot with that grease?
Is everything okay, madam? Disappear him? Let's give you some distance. Well, Ralphie. Wait, disappearance? That's weird. Never mind, I don't really need to think about that too often. Did I sell to the wrong person? No.
Welcome back. Let's talk about some art. So tonight is First Friday, and every first Friday of every month, art galleries, museums, all that kind of stuff open up their doors, host special parties to kind of kick off a lot of the new art installations. And kicking things off for your guys is at the Missoula Art Museum. This is Taylor Irving joined the Missoula Art Museum for the First Friday opening of Beyond Bison, Returning Land to the Original Stewards by Taylor Irving, a Salish and Kootenai journalist and a photographer raised in the Flathead Indian Reservation. The evening featured live music by Elephant Gerald and marks the opening of a powerful exhibition exploring land stewardship and indigenous sovereignty. The photographs of the bison range under the tribal management alongside images of tribal members practicing land-based traditions. Irving highlights the deep connection between people, place, and cultural responsibility. Her work offers a thoughtful reflection on history, resilience, and ongoing commitments to caring for indigenous lands free and open to the public. And then we got The Artist Shop is hosting Prior Lives, photography by Judy Ann Johnson, interiors and artifacts of the western Montana ghost towns of Bannock and Garnet that conjure up the lives of settlers amongst the ghosts of their sovereign indigenous predecessors and contemporaries. So this is one of many things, including FMC Books, which is hosting Chloe Lyons for their first Friday. They're hosting, and she brings lush living surrealism to the FMC Books, blending technical realism with the vivid soul of the natural world. Her succulents pulse with color, and her coral blooms in otherworldly detail. Through her eyes, living organisms become both grounded and dreamlike. Rooted in reality, yet suspended in something far more intimate. From 4 to 8 p.m., FMC Books will be hosting this art exhibit. Then we got the youth art at the Juried Hellgate Arts Show. So this is Hellgate High School's 4th annual Juried Art Show. This is happening here at the Missoula Public Library from 5 to 7, so you get an extra hour after the library closes. They're also featuring the Hellgate Jazz Band. This is a fun, festive show. Attendees can vote for their favorite art piece. Community judges will elect their favorite works first, second, and third place winners, and selected students will remain on display through March. For opening night only, temporary art will be displayed, including a hanging installation of over 250 Hellgate art student pieces and unique installations by Ceramics 2, sculptures, and drawings. Mingle with the Hellgate art and music community members at this special event. So that's what's happening tonight here at the Missoula Public Library. Ghost Towns of the American West. This is Gallery 709 inside the Montana Art and Framing. They are featuring Lee Silliman. This is the Ghost Towns of the American West. An opening reception with live music by Jay Alm is from 5 to 9 p.m. It's a black and white photography exhibit focusing on the vestiges of ill-fated Western enterprises. These intended moments to man's former strivings are subject to Lee Silliman's 8 by 10-inch view camera. The photographs were taken over 20-year periods in 10 Western states, and Gallery 709 is off of Ronan Street along the bike path. And for more information, you can go to gallery709.com. Then we got Human Error by Grace Lawless. She presents Human Error a whole lot of evening because that is the human experience. She is fueled by doubters and naysayers. She believes in dreaming more than most things. Lawless paintings also resemble playful and childlike imagery because she loves the authenticity and rawness of those states of mind are able to evoke. We were all once children, and she is fascinated by that. Her art can sometimes be ironic, highlighting her own mental block to becoming a successful artist. She lives by her last name and really has no rules or bounds for how or what she creates. And the reception is 5 to 8 p.m. at the Confluence Center on 119 Main Street. It also features live music by Jazz Quartet featuring MJ Williams, Beth Lowe, Dave Horgan, and Naomi Siegel. Human Error will remain on display through March 28th. And then finally, we got at Western Cider featuring Luca Bella Schwartz from Duluth, Minnesota. She fell in love with Missoula after moving here. The recent graduate of the University of Montana College of Business says she always maintained a parallel life as an artist. So Material Memory marks her first solo exhibit over at the Western Cider, so you can check that out. A lot of art happening in the downtown Missoula area, but there's also all sorts of other fun things happening in the downtown Missoula area. So when I come back, I'm going to talk more about those things. But first, we're going to throw it over to the 4 history buffs, talking about graphic designs with Luke Duran.
Yeah, good. I see some hands. This was a U.S. Geological Survey sent out by President Grant shortly after the Civil War. And the brilliance of this group is that there were all kinds of people on this team. There was geologists, there was climatologists and meteorologists, there were artists, there were biologists, there were map makers, cartographers. And they all journeyed up. They started in southern Utah and made their way up through Wyoming into southern Montana and ended up in what we now know as Yellowstone country. And along that journey, they were really smart, besides the scientists, to bring like a photographer. So William Henry Jackson, very well-known photographer at the time, was part of this expedition, took some of the very first photographs of Yellowstone National Park. There's another piece from him. Isn't that gorgeous? God, what a great image. There was cartographers, like I mentioned, Henry Wood Elliott, who did some of the very first topographic maps of that area, that region. He was also a watercolorist. Most of his career after the Hayden expedition, he went north to Alaska and did 40 years of research and art and science, mainly on seals, if you will, in the Anchorage area on the coast. But he contributed these beautiful images, that's Yellowstone Lake, way back in 1871. And then many of you will probably...
And of course, For History Buffs is a program that we can do in conjunction with the Missoula Public Library and MCAT to provide monthly talks in which they talk about some history in and around the state of Montana and beyond. So without further ado, let's talk about some things that are happening in the downtown and Missoula area. If you're interested in learning French, Lifelong Learning Center does many of those and more at the Lifelong Learning Center. This one's starting this morning at 9 a.m. Also including this morning is Stroller Strides, as always, happening Monday through Fridays, 9:30 at Bonner Park. Stroller Strides Mommy Me workout classes. Little Clubs Playgroup, the Sports Barn, some indoor family fun time at Mismo Gymnastics, all at 10 a.m. Tiny Tales, the Missoula Public Library at 10:30 a.m. Preschool playtime at the Roots Acre Sports Center at 10:45, so a lot of indoor fun for kids. As the weather starts getting a little bit warmer outside, I won't probably talk too much about those organizations because the amount of play and the amount of opportunities for kids to play outside are increasing. Lunch at the Missoula Senior Center. They also have one at the Palvero Center happening at around the same time at 11 a.m. every Monday through Friday. Yarns and watercolor here at the Missoula Public Library for people who want to learn to stitch and sew and also do some painting along the way, all every Friday at the 4th floor of the Missoula Public Library at noon. We also have a social pickleball hosted by Lifelong Learning Center. If you want to get into pickleball, Lifelong Learning Center has a class or 2 or 20 of them. All Abilities Art Club at the base. This is at 1 p.m. They do this every Friday at 1 p.m. Brown Bag and Bones with paleontologist Jason C. Poole at the Natural History Center, as always at 1 p.m. It seems to be an ongoing event happening as well. Youth Adult Writers Group here at the Missoula Public Library about getting kids involved with literature at 3:30 p.m. every Friday. Learn computer animation with Blender here at MCAT from 4 to 6 p.m. We also have one on Monday nights from 6 to 8 p.m., but this is another extension for our Fridays. Tango Dance Party, Montana Moonlight Studios. This at 6 p.m. It's a dance or thing where you just hang out, dance, meet people. Friday night dinner and game nights at Rooster Cafe at 6 p.m. This is off of Reserve. Behind the Bottle, the Montana Wine Parent Experience at the Barn off Mullen. Karaoke at the Jack Saloon at 7 p.m. Leaf and Quiet Jazz Off the Rails at 7 p.m. They got Women's Day, 70th Women's Day. This is the theme is 70s Flower Power Dance Party at the Free Cycles at 7 p.m. All ages and genders welcomes, costumes encouraged, Earth with Girls, EWG envisions a future where all girls and women can feel empowered in their bodies. Rhino Ross at the Art Night benefiting Wilderness Watch at the Rhino Bar at 7 p.m. Student night at Montana Denison Theater. This is their kind of pre-student night show featuring Ocean of Sound, which will be playing this weekend, a program that explores the depths of emotion and vastness of the musical expression. This concert features a work premiere of The Places We Will Never Be the Same by Missoula composer Brian Costers and performance by Claire Schumann's piano concerto in A minor with world-renowned pianist Gabriel Martinez. The Lightning Thief is going to be running at MCT this weekend and beyond, so you can check that out at mct.org or mctinc.org, mind you. The Lightning Thief, Percy Jackson musical, is happening at 7:30 p.m. If you are not aware of that, it's essentially a modern retelling of Perseus, who is the son of Zeus, who must basically go into this Harry Potter style world of Roman mythology and just kind of deal with growing pains of being a teenager half demigod. So anyways, the Inn at Derbyshire. This is Zootown Arts Community Center. They're running through the weekend. This is a play. Outside the rain might be falling in heavy torrents, but through the way of heavy beams at the Derby Shore roof, a fire has just been lit and is ready to warm its guests. 3 distinguished gentlemen have braved the foul weather, anticipating a romantic rendezvous, but who has lured them all together here and what purpose? A night of mystery, mayhem, and murder awaits. Come in and out of the storm. Way Down North is playing at the Old Post, some with bluegrass music tonight at 8 p.m. Jade Flask at Monk's playing some rock music. Kyle Curtis and the Promised Land at Union Club. And then finally, wrapping things up, the top hat is Jam Poke at 10:30 p.m. And then as we move into Saturdays, if you're interested in some of the farmers market and the winter market, we'll still have most of April before we kick off with the summer May outdoor farmers market. But if you're interested, locals only. Badlander will host the Clark Fork River Market. as they do their winter market there, and also the farmers market, which is at the Southgate Mall during their winter market from roughly 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Line dance at Missoula Senior Center, walk-in hours at the Missoula Makerspace, which is inside the Missoula Public Library, all at 10 a.m. Student Camp Expo at the Missoula Public Library. This is on the second floor of Missoula Public Library. This is, if anybody is interested in meeting with the organizations that are hosting summer camps, that's happening Saturday at 10 a.m. Queer Prom presents Cafe Queer at Tandem Bakery and Cafe to help raise money for the LGBTQ Center and their own Queer Prom. Missoula Tour, museum tour at the Missoula Art Museum at 11 a.m. every Saturday. Story time at 11:30 a.m. at Missoula Public Library. MCAT Saturday drop-ins back. Last week we had our scouts, which was a great experience for them. Oh geez, I'm trying to yawn, burp, or throw up. I can't tell. But anyways, MCAT Saturday drop-ins every Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m. Sewing clothes, where to start, class confident stitch at 1 p.m. Rally to take back science, health, and democracy, Missoula County Courthouse at 1 p.m. On Saturday afternoon. Prune the Moon at Moon Randolph Homesteads. They're pruning some of their trees, and they're doing a workshop to get people to do some migrant work there. Saturday Tiny Tales at Missoula Public Library at 3 p.m. Clay Night at Planter Pals. This is the Clay Studio of Missoula at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Hell's Bells at the Wilma's. Been playing some at rock music at 7 p.m. Folklore Society doing contra dance at the Elks Ballroom. Dueling pianos at Stave and Hoop at 8 p.m. Karaoke at Westside Lanes. Cash for Junkers at 9. Chris Moon wrapping up your Saturday at the Badlander at 10 p.m. And then, we, of course, on Sunday, we got the Missoula Villages hosted through the Missoula Asian Services. They're doing their Tai Chi and Tea at 11 a.m. Sunday Fun Day Game Day at Cranky Sam Public House at noon on Sunday. Also Sunday Stitch and Bitch at the Space at DIY Studio at 12 noon every Sunday. Winter Sunday Beginning Pottery at Clay Studio. They usually do these intro-level classes at the Clay Studio of Missoula every Sunday from 1 to 4. It's also dance class at Rocky Mountain Ballet Theater at 1 p.m. Get Lit, the Pain Savvy Health Literacy at the Missoula Public Library. This is for people who live with chronic pain, looking for a support group. This is the best place to do it. Pinball Tournament at Odd Pitch Brewing at 4 p.m. Women's Day lecture at the Heritage Hall at the Fort Missoula at 4 p.m. It's a celebration of bold voices, quiet revolutions, and the women who reshape the world, often without permission. International Women's Day Sunday, March 8th at 4 p.m. Step into the stories that built us. Join at Heritage Hall at Fort Missoula campus for an evening of history, powerful remembrance as former Montana Senator Diane Sands and Western Montana redistricted history expert Sophia Edier shared the stories and lasting impacts of the extraordinary Western women who resilient shaped our present and future. Bingo at Tamarack at 5 p.m. Dram Trivia at the Dram Shop at 6 p.m. Sunday Jazz at Draftworks, and wrapping up your Sunday is karaoke at the Sunrise Saloon. So those are your events happening more. Of course, I still have a lot more time at the end of my show. It looks like I breezed right through most of everything, but I'll probably keep it short for the most part. One of the big news that are happening is that definitely a big shakeup in our political system here in the state of Montana, with not only one congressman stepping down for retirement for health issues, but also Steve Daines has now officially retired his position this week, not seeking re-election. So that position for senator is going to be wide open, and this week was also the last week to kind of close that deadline to apply to run for the primary of the GOP and also the Democratic seat, which there's a lot of news happening there, because I'm kind of burying the lead with the whole concept of Tim Sheehy essentially breaking the arm of a Marine veteran. So the video dropped Wednesday, and it didn't look good for the junior senator. Usually protesters get thrown out by security, but Tim Sheehy, our own senator here in Montana, grabbed himself by the bootstraps to do the work himself, resulting in the Marine getting injured. CBS News correspondent Alan Heed identified the protester as Brian McGinnis, who dressed in Marine Corps dress uniform. Quote, McGinnis is a Green Party candidate running for Senate in North Carolina, and Tim Sheehy responded in a statement saying, Capitol Police were attempting to remove an unhinged protester from the armed service hearing. He was fighting back. I decided to help out and de-escalate the situation. This gentleman came to the Capitol building looking for confrontation, and he got one. I hope he gets the help he needs without causing further violence, end quote. The video ends with a voice from the crowd stating that the senator broke McGinnis's hand. A sitting senator has hurt sitting member of the Senate. So the attendants were in shock. This all had to do with the fact that U.S.-Israeli alliances has claimed that Iran has not negotiated in good faith and decided to start the bombing operation. Across Iran, many influential and powerful figures have been wiped off the map, with major fallout coming from the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's death from targeted bombing. Interim leader Arafi, Ayatollah Arafi, is joined by members of their order to take the reins. And so far, Iran bombing continues through today, and the U.S. Decided to see if they're going to do any kind of war resolution act by Congress, which failed. They did one by Senate, failed. And initially, the U.S. military folks lost their lives in all the madness, with millions of Americans stuck in the Middle East after violence broke out across the Arab nations. Charter flights are starting to get out of there, but there still is a lot of things happening there with a lot of the Arab nations, UAE, Qatar, and many other places that hold U.S. military bases, as Iran bombs many strategic posts for U.S. and Israel allies. Oil is also on track to go up in prices, especially in Europe, taking the brunt of the 60% increases there. Gas prices have been a major issue in American support for foreign wars and campaign continuing. And so far, the U.S. has Ukraine, Israel, and Iran to fund as they grip with the costs of war and military interventionism. Here in Missoula, we're going to kind of sidestep and talk about things that are happening us here that we have some control over. Rental vacancy is up according to 2025's Missoula Organization of Realtors. While pricing has made it hard for people to get in housing, the 6% vacancy rate in Missoula puts the level at a healthy community according to reports. And, speaking off the cuff, the Missoula current article, renter vacancy is easier to accomplish when there's less people able to afford to live in Missoula. Back to the story, the report, the rental market increased by roughly 25% last year. 1 and 2 bedrooms listed between $1,800 and $2,500 rented more slowly than units priced under $1,500. 3-bedroom units stabilized in price, undergoing an average increase of 0.13% with an average of rent of $2,200. The Villaggio, when they first opened, had about 3-bedroom apartments surplus, trying to fill in those gaps for many folks. Many increases come from the fact that operating costs also goes into maintenance. Don't get me wrong, larger complexes could swing a couple more bucks, but this report reflects about a $70 per unit per month based on tax increases. And part of the biggest swings in Montana to combat property taxes had multifamily complexes across the state, and especially with long-term rental housing units. If an apartment complex plays ball and has long-term rental, they have a less chance of paying those extra taxes as opposed to people who try to use Airbnb, which is part of the Homestead Act. So speaking of which, make sure your home qualifies for tax exemption. It's pretty easy, and all you got to go to revenue.mt.gov for more information on this, and to make sure your home doesn't get stuck with a higher property tax this year. And it also, as we're talking about taxes and Congress and everything like that, and kind of not necessarily going back to Tim Sheehy, but also Ryan Zinke, who is not running for re-election. Montana's first district will be having an open race between a growing roster of Dems, and now Republicans are looking for somebody to take on the challenge. In this long post, he reflected his time and wanted to retire based on some health issues. Among his statements, he also advocated for term limits and oversaw public lands as Trump's Secretary of the Interior during Trump's first administration. And so far, Montana's Secretary of State Christy Jacobson is eyeing a run for the open seat, so expect to see her chop wood and lean against old fences in ads. She was recently endorsed by the current job by 2024 and by President Trump when he showed up for Tim Sheehy's rallies in Billings. She also is known to have sent those safe voting mailers, and with her and President Trump using Montana taxpayer money to promote safe elections. If you're looking for low-income housing, applications are open until the end of the month. First Step is now accepting application for the Rivara project off Scott Street Northside Housing Project. The land went into trust after the Northside rezoned during the pandemic, resulting in the finishing of Villaggio and groundbreaking of the Rivara project. This project is one of a kind with affordability housing units for purchase in the land lease program that allow folks to build equity without the additional strain of land purchase. The income qualified homes include studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom options with price ranging from $176,000 to $287,000 for those permanent residences. For references, that equates to approximately, for folks making $94,000 annually for a 2-person household, being that 120% average median incomes. This is also a lottery system, and those applying individually have less of a chance, as couples get 3 entries. Families of 3 or more can get 5 entries to the lottery system to choose who's lucky enough to be able to afford to buy these affordable housing projects. So it's not without its burdens, as Missoula has built this program not knowing how this can be replicated in the future. Missoula's priorities are looking to build more housing in general, despite public pressure to support affordable housing. That pressure also comes from the Midtown Commons, which also joined the Southgate neighborhoods and frankly to the Fort neighborhood to make sure Missoula needs to be met above developers. The city has stated in many meetings that the markets as a whole is what the current markets in town are dealing with, which at this point, sorry, I'm doing double speak, but ideally the old market from before in the 2020s, as Montana doesn't really feel the impact of a lot of those issues of most things in the national markets until maybe a year or two after the fact. Of course, our prices definitely went up like crazy from 2020 with our reevaluations and everything, and not to mention our rates for housing, percentage interest for housing went down pretty low. I think the whole idea is that especially with this new administration, a lot of grants, infrastructure programs were cut with the big beautiful bill, which went counter to the Green New Deal, that a Build Back Better that Biden passed. But a lot of that had to do with the fact that there's just not enough houses that are being built in Missoula. We're also basing those numbers off the people who came here at the bursting of the pandemic bubble, where a lot of people wanted to get out of bigger cities, move to places like Missoula and across the state of Montana, not just from California, but a big part of that had to do with the numbers of that time. And then as we're seeing that we're not necessarily getting those large numbers from those bigger cities, as things are starting to get some kind of sense of normalcy and predictability when it comes to the population growth in Missoula, but we're still expected to grow another 20,000 or roughly 1,000 more people every year for the next 20 years based on current trends. So there's a lot going on for sure, and I don't have too much to say except for the fact that MCAT will also be part of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. They usually are, and we're going to be part of the parade, which will be kicking off on Saturday. I believe that's, let's see, a week from, March 14th at 12 noon. So from the Red X's to the Grizzly Grocery or the roundabout off Higgins, you guys can check out the parade. We're going to get plenty of candy for y'all to throw at the kids. Actually, we're not allowed to throw it. We're supposed to hand out candy to the kids. Parade etiquette for you guys want to know out there. But of course, now I'm just kind of rambling on. So I'm going to wrap up my show. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Scott Ramf. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.